it's so good to be together again.
I love it. I love it when we get a chance to catch up in person.
Yeah, our conversations are great. I think they go right to the heart of the issues, hopefully.
Yeah.
This time around, we're together just before National Reconciliation Week.
Yes, an important week for all Australia.
Absolutely. And it'd be nice to have a conversation that would help all Australia to figure out what they can do during that week, which is often a question that we get asked, and I think more people should be stepping up and doing something.
Okay, let's chat.
Let's chat. So the theme this year is all in. So thinking about that and the work that we do with sponsors and sponsees, but let's lean into the sponsor in particular. What do you reckon it would mean for someone who's non-Indigenous, says they want to be a sponsor? What does all in look like?
Look, that's a really good question, Katriina. And for me, all in is acknowledging that reconciliation in this country is all of our responsibilities. It's not just Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people's responsibilities, or you as an ally, or you as a sponsor. It is all of our responsibilities to acknowledge and to think about and talk about our histories and our joint histories, and then what we need to do today to live in the present, and then what we want, our aspirations for our future. And that's where I see our sponsors, when we talk about our sponsors in our corporate organisations and in our organisations who want to make a difference. All in for me is where they understand their shared responsibility. They might even take some of the cultural load. We hear about cultural load for our Indigenous staff members in our workplaces. So taking some of that cultural load, talking about consent, you know, and checking in and not making assumptions or presuming to know what's best for the Indigenous staff member. So for me, getting consent with decision making or next steps is a really important way that our sponsors and team leaders in our workplaces and senior leaders can demonstrate that all-in approach.
And I love you used the word responsibility and then you described actions. And for me, that's so different from I'm a supporter or I'm an ally, which is this sort of like, I'm there for you, but I'm not going to do anything. You've really given like a little bit more depth and character to what responsibility is compared to support.
Well, thank you. I will take that. And it doesn't, you know, we talk and we hear people talk about, you know, making a seat at the table for us Indigenous people to have a voice. And I say, that's great, you know, make a seat. But at some stage as an ally, should you be at that table, or do you give up your seat and step back and let the Indigenous voice, their lived experience sitting at that table, take the lead? And that to me will show us the maturity of us as we grow as a country in our organisations, that we are able to kind of step back and let those with the lived experience speak their truth and what they need for their role in the organisation.
Yeah. And as you say that, some people might be cringing, going, oh, my God, that's so revolutionary what you've said. But, you know, that's just succession planning. That's been going on for millennia is I'm here for a short time, I'm going to pass the baton to someone. Well, figure out who that person's going to be and make it someone who doesn't look exactly like you.
And I suspect, you know, Katriina, that people have done this when it comes to gender issues within our workplaces. Yeah. So, you know, creating a seat for a woman at the table. Look at them now. We are CEOs. We are chair people of the boards. We do rule the world. And so I think it's really important to see that this is a natural progression for society and for us as a country, that we were going to see more and more people with different, diverse lived experiences in decision-making roles in our organisations and on our boards.
So we're talking about all in and why sponsors matter. And you and I know that often people will focus on mentors and mentoring. Why do you think it's particularly important for First Nations people to have a sponsor?
Look, sponsorship to me is that we've levelled up, that it's a serious investment by an organisation, that it's not just putting us on a mentoring program or a coaching program, which are all necessary parts of our corporate experience and our organisational lives. But sponsorship, where somebody bets on us, where somebody invests their time and energy, their personal reputation, their brand, they're prepared to invest in the Indigenous staff member, and they're prepared to take the time to listen, to really listen to that staff member and what their personal and professional aspirations are, and then do something with that information. So to me, I love the concept of sponsorship. As a blackfellow, we're not really good at big noting ourselves. And so sponsorship takes that pressure off us and lets somebody else see the magic we are, the magic we have, and what that looks like and what they can do with that in their organisation.
And it's not deficit-based thinking. It's not saying that there's something you can't do. What I love is it's bringing to life that definition that we use in our work, which is a mentor talks to you, but a sponsor talks about you. And it's that responsibility to talk about someone who's not in the room so that they are being prepared for that seat. And you have to have that in corporate Australia to get ahead. That's just life. And in other industries and sectors as well, whether it's academia or other professions, you need that person talking about you in the room that you're not in.
And that is the secret spice. Is that what you call it? The secret to the success of WARA, our Indigenous sponsorship program, is that it teaches non-Indigenous people to listen more deeply and understand, more importantly, what's going on with their Indigenous workforce and what they need to support an Indigenous workforce progress throughout their organisation. I love the concept of sponsorship because it comes with that, as you said, that it's not a deficit model. It's a spotlight. Floodlight. I love that. It shines a floodlight on those people that, as you've said previously, can sometimes be invisible in their organisations or feel invisible in their organisations. So it's important.
So during this week, we're going to hear lots of well-intentioned comments and statements, I'm guessing, and they're hopefully coming from a good place. But can you share with us from your experience, where do some of these well-meaning intentions go wrong? Where does it not quite land the way it was meant to?
Look, and that's a really good question for us to consider and explore at this time, because lots of organisations and some of our allies really do want to make a difference. And you're right, the intention is pure and important. Where sometimes it goes wrong is when we stop listening to what the individual in front of us needs, when we presume to know what's best for them. And I see that a lot in organisations where we're pushing people to stay or take the next promotion straight away, and the Indigenous person's like, oh, I just need another 6 months in the job and then I'll be really, I'll be ready. And we don't listen to what they need and we push them beyond their comfort zones. That isn't helpful, right? There's a time to push and pull and prod and encourage, but there's also a time to listen, because like most people, we have a very full life outside of work too. So we tend to know what we need and when we need something. Sometimes we just don't have the tools to get to that next step, or the strategies to get to that next step in our career. So sometimes I find the not listening, and the other times is that this is my Indigenous friend, this is my Indigenous staff member, this is and that ownership. And I can get a bit funky when we hear people trying to claim us as a chattel within an organisation. So I try really hard to encourage people to say, this is Carlyn who works in our organisation, not my staff and my employee, and put that ownership back on us. It's just a nuance, but it's one of those things that kind of comes with a bit of our history. So knowing our history and how our communities were moved and dispersed and challenged by government policies really is quite helpful in how to work with Indigenous people.
Is there something labelling or performative that comes along with that example you just gave?
It does, and we know that.
Yeah.
We know when it's only rolled out for the week, for Reconciliation Week, or when it's rolled out for NAIDOC Week, and then the other 50 weeks of a year there's crickets. We get that. And so it's best not to be performative. And as I say, BNLA 365, 66 on those odd years, days a year, because that we do know, when you're not true and truthful and authentic, you can tell. And just we're humans like everyone else. We can tell when people, really like us and want what's best for us and are listening to us and championing and sponsoring us. We can tell those people.
Yeah. And at least they're taking responsibility for doing it. I think the other one I've seen is where someone says, oh, but I don't know what to do. So then they do nothing. And you go, well, how is that being supportive? And it's almost like I'm blameless, but I didn't do anything either.
Well, you can't get blamed if you actually don't do anything. But I think that's very obtuse of people to choose that as a strategy. It's not for their personal growth when they decide that it's all too hard. There is lots of things that we don't know as Indigenous people that we are constantly pushing and trying to learn and challenging ourselves, and it does make you uncomfortable. You do have to be vulnerable when you don't know the right way to have that conversation or to broach that subject. But I think it's worth. I think we're worth it, and I think we should challenge ourselves to work out how to communicate better with each other.
And the same could be said for many, many cultures in the Australian workplace.
Correct.
Yeah, that's not limited to any one culture. I think we have that many potential cultural clashes, as we've talked about before, that, no one group should be held out as being the group who doesn't know how to do this or can't do that.
And all the communication is that everyone aspires to that communication model. For me, I think that's part of understanding and playing a tribute to the diversity of our workplaces, the way we speak to each other, the way we think. Some cultures, like some of Aboriginal communities, don't have a word for thank you because that's not how our community operates. So, you can see how that could play havoc in a workplace where we don't say thank you to a colleague. Some Aboriginal communities do have a word and they do have that as a concept. Some of our countries and people from colleagues from other countries have the similar cultural norms where they don't have a term for thank you. It's not part of their culture. So you can see where those little things can cause such offence.
I'm smiling because it's just occurred to me in Finnish there is no word for please. So can you imagine you and me getting together? I'm not going to say please
and
to
I'm not
you.
going to say thank you. That's why we're a good pair.
Carlyn, for all the non-Indigenous leaders who are watching this, what would be the one thing that you would want to ask of them as they ponder how they can go all in this week?
For me, my preference is that they'll spend this week with activities and different commemorations. Reconciliation Week isn't a celebration, it's a commemorative week. So for me, it would be reading research or articles, something that would allow you to challenge your thinking or your unconscious bias, your preconceived notions of what Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people need or want, our aspirations, our history, and read, listen to a podcast, add to your cultural knowledge. That's what I'd like from people during Reconciliation Week, is learn something about our history, why we need reconciliation.
And if I may just add to that, I think it's also important that having had that catalyst of learning in Reconciliation Week, that it extends past that week.
Definitely.
Keep going. Don't stop on the 3rd of June because you don't have to anymore. Start your learning there and then keep cultivating your learning.
Excellent. Cultivate away.
In our experience, particularly yours, there's a lot of focus on grads and getting people in the door and into that role and getting started in their career. What do you see is the thing that really makes careers sort of continue and flourish?
That's a really good question, Kat. And the experiences we've seen is when they found a great team leader in their initial grad rotation and that they move to their more permanent job after their grad program finishes, and that team leader that they had previously becomes their sponsor, their champion in the workplace. And, 12 months goes by, 2 years go by, and then that team leader, that original team leader's been put on a task force or a special project, and they go, actually, I know exactly what's missing from my team, and they bring that Indigenous colleague into the task force, into the special or strategic project. And I tend to find that's what happens. We get all this focus with grads during their grad program, and then all of a sudden they graduate and they move to what we call it their real job, and there's no special attention, there's no special focus, there's no continuing to develop themselves and their self-awareness and their networks and their leadership muscle. So I tend to find, for me, it's those first 3 to 5 years after the grad program that we risk losing our workforces and our Indigenous people in our workforces, because they're not getting what they need out of the organisation and they're not being seen enough for someone to focus in on them, to sponsor them and their careers. So I think sponsorship programs allow us to keep Indigenous people in workplaces, to get them focused and available to apply and win middle management jobs. And then, of course, it's, again, you win that promotion, you spend a couple of years living that job, getting your skill set, understanding the job, and it's when you're ready for the next level, the next opportunity, that you do need that sponsor and that sponsorship within an organisation to be able to keep progressing. Because we hear many, many times that there's lots of people with merit and skills and experience and knowledge in organisations, but they can't seem to have that next step to convert that into a promotion. That's sponsorship. Somebody knows somebody who says, actually, let's bet on that person.
That's right. There's also often, we hear a bit of a tendency to think now's the time where I'll just sit and do really hard work and my hard work will be noticed and then I'll get the tap on the shoulder to say you're ready for the next step. So there can be a tendency to prefer to kind of wait for that recognition and that you'll be told you're ready rather than being brave enough to put your hand up or put your name forward. And then if you don't have someone who's doing that for you, putting your name forward, then there you are sitting there 4 or 5 years later wondering what happened. You're still sitting there, you're working really hard. There's no question about hard work and performance, but things aren't happening.
Yeah, and people have moved around you and over you and surpassed you, and you're still relying on the fact that doing a good day's work, being a diligent, loyal staff member and delivering, managing your people well will get you that next opportunity. And sometimes that's the case, but the most of the time, and our research backs it in, that you need a champion within the organisation that looks down and goes, actually, there's someone I can bring through, someone who we can count on, somebody with the skills, and I know them. That's how we use sponsorship to our advantage in organisations.
So I'm really excited that very soon the 2026 Women's Agenda research results will be coming out, where we've again dived into career progression and what makes a difference. And one of the questions that we asked this year that was new was, what are some of the cultural superpowers you bring to your role, which has not been asked before, because often it is, again, that deficit-based thinking. But let's dive into that. What do you think some of the cultural superpowers are that Indigenous people bring to the Australian workforce?
Oh, I love it. And, you know, I think there are many, many different superpowers we bring. And really, by that I mean we have cultural norms and characteristics that then we transfer into our workplaces. One that comes to mind is that our workplaces call it stewardship. But for us, it's obligation and responsibility to look after the future. So we have an obligation and respect we need to show for our past, our ancestors, and acknowledge their commitments and what they've done to get us to where we are today. But more importantly, we are also got obligations, cultural obligations about the future and what that looks like. And I'm not talking about tomorrow or the end of the year. I'm talking 50 years' time, 3 generations' time. What we do today and how it impacts and lays the foundation for a better outcomes and better future for descendants and other Indigenous people. That's our obligations culturally. In an organisation, that shows up because we make decisions not just about today and about me and my next pay rise or my next opportunity. It's actually, is this the right thing for the organisation? Is this the right thing for the community? Actually, if it's not, I need to say something. If it is, yes, please, and how can we scale this up to create success for more, you know, community members in time. So stewardship, I think, is a really good example of one of those superpowers. Another example is the systems thinking. Because everything for us is interconnected in our environments, we're really good at bringing stakeholders along and not kind of sticking it within our lanes in workplaces. We share information, we network widely. We might be a bit quieter than the average, but we do work amongst ourselves and share and see with the interconnections, which is really good in an organisation or a sector, or even when you're working within a community, because you can see how it's the touch points and what we need to do as an organisation to make the project a success, because it's not just about building a road, but it's actually the impact for the local sporting team and getting the kids to their sport. It's understanding that the old people won't be able to cross there if the road's going to be blocked off longer than, you know, a week. Like it's thinking about all the other people and parameters, not just we're there to build a road. So, yeah, 2 superpowers. We have many more.
One of the concepts that you just spoke to was that multi-generational lens for decision making rather than a 12-month and a KPI and a bonus that comes straight away after that. And that just reminded me of the work that we do on leadership legacy with our leaders on the program. And there's a saying in there which is plant trees that you'll never sit in the shade of.
Oh, I really like that. Is that from your culture or?
I don't know whose culture, but I like it because it's like a tree in the middle of the metaphor, and it's so sums that thinking up. It's like, but it's the right thing to do to plant these trees. Thing to do. And I don't have to be here to get the glory and the power of it. It's the right thing to do for that person, that child, that family that has a picnic under the shade of that tree in 40, 50 years' time.
That's a really good example. That's a really good example of sponsorship and allyship. That it doesn't have to be personalised. It actually is planting that tree and not being personally around to see the benefits.
Absolutely. And that legacy thinking that you can get to when you're thinking beyond just skills development. It's the sort of what's the characteristic, what's the impression, what's the impact that I want to leave behind. That isn't just a task or I did this now or I got a great big bonus. It's actually that impact.
And it might surprise people to think that when we talk about that legacy, it's not just for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community. It's about us as a country. We all can see the connection to each other. So we need us all to cross the finish line, right? So improving outcomes for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people actually makes us a stronger country and gives us a better outcome and a better future for all of us in Australia.